we're going to start looking at angle of elevation versus depression. And we're going to start out with angle of elevation first. It's always the easiest one. And we have a surveyor that is standing 115 feet from the base of the Washington Monument. Okay? And the angle of elevation, they tell you, is 78.3 degrees. So this right here is the 78.3 degrees, and they call this, that is the angle of elevation. Okay. We now have two great pieces of information. We have the angle, and we have how far away the surveyor is. And the third piece we have is we can assume that the Washington Monument is perpendicular to the ground, so that makes a right triangle. And what they want to know is this over here. Okay? We can do that very easily by using right triangle trig. Okay? In comparison to the angle, this is the adjacent side, okay, and the height of it is the opposite side. So with that in mind, what we can do is we can do tangent of 78.3 degrees is equal to the opposite side, which we don't know, divided by the adjacent side, which is 115. We need to solve for x. So we would multiply both sides by 115 to get that 115 out of the denominator. Those would cancel. So now you'd get that x is equal to 115 times the tangent of 78.3 degrees. And this is when you go to your calculator. It comes out to be about 555 feet and 555 and 31/100 feet. So that's what it comes out to be. Side lengths, we're going to round to 2 decimal places. Angle measures, we're going to round to 0 decimal places, so to the nearest degree. So again, this was angle of elevation. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at angle of depression, which students always find more difficult. Angle of depression is, you start from the line of sight. So in this case, the airplane. The airplane's line of sight is horizontal. And from the line of sight, when you look down, this angle right here is called the angle of depression. Okay? So that's the angle of depression. Okay. A lot of times, a lot of students think that if we have, as this indicates that this is 2 miles here, that this would be the angle right here, this angle, but that is not the angle of depression. The angle of depression is from the horizontal and when you look down. So this angle here. Okay. So let me erase all of this now. And let's start with the word problem. So they're telling you that you have a height, the airplane is 2 miles off the ground. So this is 2 miles. Okay. They're telling you that the distance along the ground to the airport is 5 miles. And they want to know what the angle of depression is. Well, I do want to take and finish out and make that a triangle, and we know it's a right triangle because this right here is vertical, this one here is horizontal, so we do have a right triangle. But again, our line of sight, if we look out horizontally, this right here is the angle of depression. So angle of depression. Well, guess what? if we continue this horizontal and then make it into a rectangle, what we know is that this side and this side are parallel, and when it's cut by the diagonal, which you guys have also heard be called a transversal back in middle school, that this angle right here, which you guys would call the angle of elevation, is the same thing as the angle of depression. So the angle of depression and the angle of elevation, so that x and this x are identical to each other. So we're going to use that information, and even though it's asking us for the angle of depression, which is this angle, okay, we are going to find this angle, the angle of elevation. So angle of elevation, angle of depression, we're going to find angle of elevation, and it's going to give us the same thing. So now, since we are finding angle of elevation, we know that this is the adjacent side to this angle x, and that this is the opposite side. So we're going to use tangent again. So tangent of angle x is equal to the opposite side, 2, over the adjacent side. And then the algebra is x is equal to the inverse tangent of 2/5. And when we go to our calculator, we find out that x is approximately 22 degrees. You're rounding to the nearest degree. So that's what the angle of elevation, so this is approximately 22 degrees, and this is approximately 22 degrees. So now you found the angle of depression, but you need to keep in mind that the angle of depression is looking out horizontally from your line of sight and then down, that angle right there. So this is the angle. I can't stress that enough because a lot of students have a hard time with that.